Through a Scottish Prism, the programme that is unapologetically pro-Scottish independence and anti-Westminster rule. Everything we say here is viewed through a Scottish prism. Brought to you by Barhead Boy.
Hi folks, welcome back to Through a Scottish Prism. I hope yours and yours are well. Again, tumultuous week, so much happening in Scotland, outside Scotland and in the world. We're always chasing the clock, so let's not waste time. Let's get everybody in. Down there in Edinburgh, we've got Lloyd Quinnan, I hope. Mr. Quinnan, how are you?
I'm okay, Roddy, not bad. Yes, we're living in interesting times, as they say.
Yep, was that you barking?
Yes, I am barking.
Yes, barking mad, we know that. I think he's somewhere in Brussels. Mr. Boswell, how are you?
Yeah, I'm down in Mons, just about to head out with some mates and go for dinner, and then head on to Shape and find out what the hell is going on. Because
what do you mean you're going to? We're your only mates. What are you talking about?
Well, I got a couple of quid, so I bought another couple.
All right, okay. And I don't know where she is. I know where she was today, but I don't know where she is now. Our favourite lawyer, it's our Eva. How are you doing?
Very well, Roddy, thank you. I'm pleased to say that my slave here is handing me gins copiously, and we're in Arbroath looking out onto the water. It's dreich, it's cold, it's windy, and it's Scotland, and I love it to bits, and it's just gorgeous.
Well, I'm in Poland, and my wife's not giving me gin. You can see her in the background. She's cleaning the floor, wiping the floor or something. I don't know what she's doing. But she's not supplying me with gin, that's for sure. Oh, yep, you got any gin for me? No? What's that? Oh, yeah, we're live, love. Thanks. And down in Dundee, we have Mr. There he is. Without even finishing, it's Mr. Petrie. How are you, Mr. Petrie? The hardest working man in the east coast of Scotland.
I'm doing quite well. Just back from Perth, where Eva was at the IFS convention. And I've got to say, well done, William Duggan, for putting together such a good organisation.
Excellent. Yeah, well, just before we get started, I've got to get this off my chest because I'm extremely depressed today. As you all know, I'm a big peacenik, and the events that have happened in the last 48 hours are absolutely tearing me apart. And what's making it worse and making me more determined than ever to get us out of this bloody union is our Prime Minister talking about, saying that Israel had a right to defend itself by making an attack, which everyone will tell you is broken international law. And I feel sorry for all the civilians that have died in Iran. And, this might get me some stick from some of you out there, but I also feel for the civilians that have been injured and hurt in Israel. It's the civilians that always get hurt and injured and killed because of these mad politicians. And it's really killing me that these wars are avoidable. And it's just the greed of the few and the absolute nutcases that are all our politicians, and particularly the ones we've got when we've got Lamy and Starmer, who are heading us towards a world war, folks. And I was out today, as I say, I'm in Poland, and I was out with my wife, and we're in the shopping centre now. I don't like shopping at the best of times. Everyone's going about minding their own business, and I don't think people in the world realise just how close we are to a nuclear holocaust. Because of idiotic politicians. It's not the people I hate in these countries, it's their governments. And it really, as a peacenik, I'm beginning to despair that we're never going to get there. Anyway, my wee rant's over. I'm feeling a wee bit better now. But I had to get it off my chest because I hate it. I've been attacked by people because I shouted in February 22, Lloyd, that we need to stop this special military operation. Let's have a ceasefire, an immediate ceasefire. Immediately made me a pro-Putinist. When India and Pakistan were at it, I shouted for an immediate ceasefire. They didn't know whether to call me pro-Modi or what. And now I don't know whether I'm going to be called a Zionist or a Jew hater because I'm shouting for peace. But I'm fed up with wars and all this killing that's unnecessary. How about you?
I feel exactly the same, Roddy. I remember the '67 war, which took Europe and the Soviet Union close to a nuclear conflagration, which was provoked by the Israelis. I remember the 73 Yom Kippur War as well, where we also ended up in a point of near nuclear confrontation. I remember very clearly the invasion of the Falklands and the suggestion that Britain should nuke Buenos Aires. And for me, the only thing that draws all these things together are the politicians, and Westminster politicians. Westminster politicians who blithely say that countries have a right to defend themselves, that blithely lie to us as they provide fuel for the aircraft that were used to attack Iran yesterday. I'm finding this very, very difficult because there are very, very stupid people saying extraordinarily stupid things which could result in the death of my family.
Yeah.
And everybody out there needs to waken up to this. This isn't chat. It's not chit chat. When Healy says, when Starmer says, when Lamy says, a country that has attacked another country, in fact, there's a history of attacking countries all around it for years and years. When it attacks a country and they describe that as being defense, well, waking up, folk out there. We've got Faslane on our doorstep. And if one of these days Russia, the Russian Federation, or even France, a nuclear power, decides that Faslane is a threat and it gets hit, we're the ones that are going to die. Time for us to get out of this benighted union. So long as we are part of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, we are all wandering around with a red, white and blue target on our back. And I don't want that for my child. I don't want that for anybody's children. And it's our responsibility, this generation, to get us out of this nonsense so that we can take part in creating a world of peace, a peaceful world, where we do what the Irish do, where we provide support in a neutral form. We provide UN peacekeepers. We provide medical support that's required in areas of conflict. That's the only thing that we should be engaging in. But until we remove ourselves from the United Kingdom, we're stuck with that big red, white and blue target on our back.
Yeah. That's the thing, Phil. I want to see us having a defence policy, not an offence policy. And there's a big difference. I mean, I think it was last week, it was Lloyd that mentioned it used to be called the Ministry for War or the War Department. And then they moved it to make it sound nicer, defence. But it's not about defence. And as long as we're in the Union, as Lloyd points out, we're a target. And these lunatics are dicing with death for us all.
And the survival of the planet and the species, this is deadly serious. It doesn't get any more dangerous than this. And where do you start with this? This is the US and Chihuahua European states' latest proxy war. Get Israel to fight Iran as part of the elitist strategy prior to taking on China and in the Far East. This is absolutely horrific. I mean, what do we do about it? What can we do about it? Well, firstly, inform yourselves, folks. Seek alternative views on what is happening, as the Western media is completely complicit in the support of the Western hegemony, including support for Israel's blatant disregard for the world institutions or rules that are practicing genocide in Palestine and now attack Iran. This is Pearl Harbor. This is a Pearl Harbor moment. And note the Western media is not reporting that the Israelis hit apartment blocks where some of the Iranian government military and scientific targets lived. So innocent men, women and children were again slaughtered by this maniacal rogue state, and not a peep of condemnation from the Western media. It just doesn't bear thinking about. I cannot believe that it's come to this. We are supposed to be a peace-loving nation, and here we are again facing annihilation. We nukes 35 mile away from Glasgow. The recurring theme here is that Israel, the state of Israel, is the problem. Certainly not the Jewish people. A lot of Orthodox Jews have spoken out in support of the plight of the Palestinians. Great men like Norman Finkelstein deserve huge credit for their unwavering courage and support. People like Miriam Margolis, listening to what she says about the shame the action of Israel has given to the Jewish people and her colleagues and friends. I even watched George Galloway, who I'm not a big fan of, who praised the ANC supporting anti-apartheid, anti-racist Jews who were key in the downfall of the apartheid state in South Africa. Jews don't belong on the side of the fascists, the racists, or the apartheid state. That's history, and he's right, and God knows what's happening here. Watch Danny Haifong, okay, and his interviews with Professor Mohammed Morandi. A rational and truthful voice in this deception, this war of misinformation. I mean, it's incredible. The truth is out there. Also, the UN Secretary Security Council emergency meeting was supposed to be about the genocide in Palestine, but was changed at the last minute to a view or a discussion on why we are staring into the abyss of World War III. Check, Russia warns Israel and US, which is Russia speaking, and talking about the fact that the nuclear facilities were the most scrutinized in the world and were under IAEA safeguards. And note, the IAEA is the International Atomic Energy Agency, and there are a set of technical measures applied on nuclear material and activities to verify that nuclear facilities are not misused and nuclear material is not diverted from peaceful uses. And this is what was reported to the world authorities. Iran is not a danger, but no, West Jerusalem, as they're called by the Russians, feel they can flout all legal norms, completely ignore UN resolutions, and kill as and when they want. And the governments and leadership that support these horrible people that are in charge of Israel, and drumming up the Western countries in our media have knowingly and they've just systematically pumped up the anti-Iranian hysteria within the UN, with the UNSC and the Board of Governors within the IEA. Check it out and watch the other one. The one I found most, it just is so sad to see in such a reasoned argument. It's called on YouTube, Iran Shocks the World, Expose USA and Israel at UNSC emergency meeting. And the Israelis used the attack with full intelligence support from the USA. It's believed that the fighters, some of the bombers, flew back to Cyprus and were hidden in British bunkers bases of the UK. Yep. Israel said, "Oh, we told everybody. You told Germany, you told America, you told Britain, who were part of this, and nobody cracked a light, and nobody warned that innocent men, women, and children were being killed, and our governments are responsible. What are we going to do about it? Inform yourself first, people."
Yeah, and that's why we've got to get out of this union even more than ever. But Alan, here's the thing. Lloyd said about it's a Pearl or Phil, I don't know, about Pearl Harbor. And one of the things was the Japanese were negotiating just as literally as the Japanese planes were heading towards Hawaii and Pearl Harbor. Well, the Americans, and because Trump couldn't resist, he had to open his big gub. But they were negotiating with the Iranians. The Iranians were negotiating. It turned out the Americans weren't negotiating in good faith. They were just buying time to get the Iranians not looking the other way while the Israelis get ready to attack them. They did the same with the Minsk 1 and 2. Hollande and Merkel admitted it and said that they weren't negotiating in good faith with the Russians over the Donbass. They were getting time for NATO to train up and arm the Ukrainian army. Now, why now would Russia listen to a word that the Americans are saying about ending the war in the Donbass? Why would they trust? Why would the Chinese trust the Americans when they're discussing Taiwan? And these are the people that we're tied in with if we don't get the hell out of this British Union.
That's the biggest problem. The West cannot be trusted because they are sleeked. And for Starmer to say that Israel is defending itself, when a bully hits someone and the victim hits them back, that's defense. When the bully hits back again, that is continuing with the bullying. It has nothing to do with defense of your nation. You started it. You should have just give up when they retaliated. Now, we really need to take the money out of the arms industry. And to do that, you're going to have to find the oligarchs and remove the money from them and redistribute that wealth. Because just now, they are sitting there with all that money and funding all these, playing their little war games, while our sons and daughters and the sons and daughters of our brothers and sisters abroad are dying. They are having their fun by sitting there playing their war games in their own safety. It is bloody ridiculous. And they're using this also is population control. They start the hatred of other countries, so as their own citizens then believe, oh, it's okay just to go and blow them up. They're just troublemakers. They're all terrorists. But they're not. They're human beings. It's time people realised that within this planet, there is one race, and that is the human race. So stop the hatred. We're all equal. We're all Jack Thompson's bairns. And if this continues, hear my words, there will be subscriptions in this country. Your sons and daughters are in danger of being sent into these countries to die for their war games. Are you going to settle for that? Or are you going to start taking action and start questioning? Get out on the streets, demand our troops are removed from these countries and brought back to the safety of this country, and remove Starmer from power. Because without that, and in fact, go further and remove Starmer from power, remove Westminster from power. 2026, you have the opportunity. Liberate Scotland candidates to go into Parliament and remove Westminster's power over this nation. Because that's the only way our sons and daughters will be safe. And then we could enter peace negotiations with these other companies and try and batter some heads together in the West. Because wars are never good. Nobody wins wars. So get that through your thick skulls now.
Yeah, the only people that win them are the people who are making the money and selling the guns. Two things. I mean, the hypocrisy of the Israelis, who were talking about when the Iranians fired back. Oh, the Iranians have crossed the red line. We're the victim again. Amazing, Eva. And also, Iranians have warned the British, the Americans, the French, and the Germans that if they assist and try and protect Israel from these attacks, then we become a target. We become a target. And in response, Starmer has sent more Air Force jets to Cyprus to be ready to attack Iran. It really is scary for us all in Scotland.
I really hate being British, and I've hated that all my life. And today is just a fine example of one of the numerous reasons for hatred of the British. And it's because Britannia, as always, waives the rules. And British governments ad infinitum throughout history have lied. And in the past, all of us here and most of the viewers will have had relatives who fought in the First and Second World Wars and in the war in Kenya, or they were in India, China, whatever. And we heard stories from the people who were forced to join up and who created history. They created the history that we read about and we were taught at school, but we were taught a certain version. We weren't always taught the truthful and honest version about how war in the main is a failure of diplomacy, and how the people that suffer the most in wars are the civilians, the women and the children, and the young men who are indeed conscripted and sent to fight. Think of the men that went over the top in the trenches. Think of those that were left behind that weren't able to be evacuated at Dunkirk, and all the wars that have ever been down through time. Remember the Yomping in Falklands. Think about the Biafran War, the illegal wars in Iraq. And all of these have brought heartache and tears and loss and grief to millions of people around the world. And Britain has been in the forefront, stirring it at every single turn. And very few of these wars were real disputes and falling out with somebody because he looked or he sounded a bit different from you, or you thought he did. And the horrible, horrible thing about all of this is these governments that are engaged in wars and in lying and in disinformation and making money for big business, they're doing that in part because they enjoy the power. It gives them a perverse sense of being in power and in control and being in charge on this planet. But they're also doing it because it's a distraction from what they should be doing in terms of governing the country competently. So the billions that are spent on war should have been redirected to the war against poverty, the war against want, towards peacekeeping operations, towards diplomacy, towards tact, towards all the positive human attributes that we know we have. But instead, we all know we're going to watch this escalate because there seems to be on the world stage a great lack of diplomats, a lack of peacemakers, a lack of men and women with the balls to say enough is enough. Draw a line and warn the warmongers that this cannot go on, it cannot continue. Innocents should not be dying left, right and centre. Wee bairns getting their limbs amputated, either blown up or because they're getting it done without anaesthetics in Gaza, and replicate that in Israel, in Iran, in all the war zones of the world, and it is completely unnecessary. I believe in God. I know many people don't, but if there is a God of whatever type he is, he's looking down here just now and thinking, what the bloody hell have that lot done now? We've got everything on this planet we could possibly want to create a happy world for everybody, and instead it seems to me that we're more intent on blowing us all to buggery and beyond.
We are indeed. We are indeed. And one of the things at the moment that we're going to come on now to what we're going to do about independence, because we've got to get out of this union. But one of the biggest things at the moment is reform. And what's reform big on? It's big on, oh, the immigrants, oh, the brown people, oh, the Muslims, oh, they're bad. They're coming here, taking your jobs, taking your women, raping your children, all that stuff. And here we have now the situation in Iran. And the same people who are cheering as the bombs land in Iran, and they bomb the power stations, and they bomb them back into the Middle Ages. And those people, like any guy, like you guys that are watching, what they want to do, they want to look after and provide for their children. So what are they going to do? They're going to emigrate. And where are they going to go? They're going to come here. They're going to go to America. They're going to go to Germany. The people who are helping that happen. That's the problem. Don't stop the boats in the channel. Stop bombing these countries. And you stop the problem. Encourage them to get their economy's better, and they won't need to leave instead of stealing from them all the time. Anyway, I'm calm now, Lloyd. I'm back. I'm calm. But we have to get out of the union. And this week, on Monday, our man John Swinney, we must turn indie support into real political action. I wonder what he meant by that, Lloyd, because by Friday, our Angus, the Rear Admiral, was saying, well, under no circumstances will the SNP be involved in any independence convention, because that would mean we'd get independence. And if we get independence, well, the gravy stops because our jobs are over. Contradictory statements, and the reason why the SNP are not the answer. They're part of the problem.
Yes, indeed they are. And it's a long-term member of the party. It's a tragedy having to say it, but the truth is the truth. But then again, this is just deja vu. During Mr. Swinney's last tenure as leader of the Scottish National Party, the party's fortunes hit an absolute rock bottom, and they are continuing today. What John means by turning indie support into positive political action, he means vote for the SNP, which is the only thing John's got left. I think the fact that there was a 5-day gap between John's statement and the witterings of Angus Robertson tells you very clearly that there is angst at the top of the SNP, that there's clearly those on manoeuvres, as we discussed last week. Now, that's obvious. That's very, very obvious. But I think for the real issue here is that this is the point where you have to actually realise that though they behave like automatons, the people we're talking about are actually human beings. The last thing in the world that either John Robertson, they might as well call him John Robertson, John Swinney or Angus Robertson wants to do is to go into a room with a bunch of people who are going to ask them questions about independence, because they know they haven't got the answers. They're also desperately, desperately weak characters. They fear the critical examination of their previous performances by people who are committed to the independence and freedom of our country. Because frankly, anyone sitting down and speaking with either Angus or John or Humza before him, or even that small woman that writes books, how could they possibly justify Brexit, Boris Johnson, Theresa May, Sunak, and now Starmer? The weakness of the British state over the past 10 to 15 years is so huge that anyone anywhere on the planet who has an understanding of how you achieve the ability to become independent would be looking at them and saying every possible star aligned over the past 10 or 15 years and you took no action. That's why they're frightened to get into a room and be in a convention, because they'll be exposed for the intellectual weaklings that they are, the spineless creatures that they are. But what they will do and will continue to do is they will try to get people to vote for them. And the clear thing is, because independence and the achievement of the freedom of your country is not simply an election to election process. This is a process that's been going on since the year 1707. For us, it's been a longer process than the Irish, but everyone knows the achievement of independence is a long game. And if you get to a situation, the situation we find ourselves in now, where the primary functionary element of the independence movement is entirely broken and should be in the repair shop, then it's time for it to be put out of its misery in the same way as the Irish Parliamentary Party was put out of its misery in 1918. The long game here. Don't get caught up in the idea that politics, if you are of a nationalist perspective or a pro-independence perspective, that it's a news item. It's not. That's to play directly into the hands of the British. If Sinn Féin had treated politics like a news item and operated only on the basis of a 24-hour, 48-hour, 72-hour cycle, or a cycle of one election to the next, where would they be? They would not have achieved what they have achieved. We have to understand that when there's a barrier in front of you, and the barrier just happens to be the supposed vanguard of the independence movement, then I'm sorry, you have to destroy the barrier. If you can't climb over it and you can't go around it, you have to smash it out of the way. And the fact of the matter is, and John Swinney knows this, and Angus Robertson has been party to creating the barrier that is the SNP, because his job is different from John's. His masters are different. That's the simple, straightforward fact of the matter. Now, for those that say, oh, you can't criticize the SNP, we must stick with the SNP, I'm sorry, you are wrong, because this is a long game. The achievement of independence does not happen with a snap of the fingers. And every possible opportunity you have to remove barriers in front of you, like, for instance, the achievement of a Scottish Parliament, which is a barrier in itself but can be overcome, the Scottish National Party, under its current leadership, and I would suggest those that are on manoeuvres, the potential future leadership, if that comes in the form of the daft boy for Aberdeen or the farmer's daughter, then I'm sorry, the SNP has to be removed entirely from the pro-independence movement. That's all there is to it.
Yeah. On that they would be, that Swinney and Robertson and others would be scared to go in and are always looking for excuses not to do it. I want to have a word just now. For 11 years, nothing's happened, and everyone on social media said, we need to do something, we need to do something, we need to do something. And we kept shouting for a constitutional convention on this show, and nothing happened. So we took matters into our own hands, and we called together a group, and it's called Liberate Scotland. And yet, we have people like the wee incel that lives, 40-year-old something that lives with his mother, who's sniping, who's attacked Stuart Campbell, who's attacked me personally, who's attacked Grouspeter, who's attacked the Alba Party, who's attacked the SNP. He's attacking Liberate Scotland now. We've got someone else, a big blowhard, who says, my way is the only way. Well, what's your way? Oh, it's my way. Your way is the wrong way. Well, all these people who are attacking us, we're trying to do something here, folks. We maybe don't get it all right. So, we're not going to vote for you because one of the parties in your group has got a couple of policies we don't like. Oh, really? That's why we're standing on one policy, independence, nothing less. That's why I, as a peacenik, I, as an anti-weapons of mass destruction, I, as a Republican, I'm parking then. The day after independence, I'll be on the case again. And I suggest you all do the same. And if you don't like the policies of some of the people, don't vote for them. But get behind the movement. We need the keys to the house before we can change the decoration inside. It's really that simple. Stop your whining. Stop your whinging. Join in. Come in. Change things. Give us your opinion. Give us your help. Stop your whining. I'm fed up with it. Phil, on that, as was alluded to, there are manoeuvres on the way. It was also noted that there's rebels met in private with in secret. Well, it didn't stay secret for very long. And as we've alluded to, we think we know a couple of them at least. They're in parties that fight among themselves, do not win elections, and they are riven with infighting just now, aren't they?
Yes, they are, and we do know some of these people but they're the usual suspects. They are not trusted trustworthy. And as I've said many times before, this is a group of people who are taking shots each at leadership. They know it's a poison chalice. They know it's the law of diminishing returns. You cannot continue to cheat the people of Scotland and grow and create better jobs. They're just desperately trying to manoeuvre and hang on to the fewer and fewer jobs that become available. So unification is everything here. Put your pride away, independentistas. I don't care if you were insulted. I don't care if you feel slighted. I don't care if you've got a temper and you spit out and you've hurt someone. You're not starving or watching your children suffer. So get over it and get behind Liberate Scotland. John Swinney's in serious trouble. He was a weak leader first time round, and it's no change this time. The usual suspects, as I said, are lining up to take over from him. And as I said some time ago, it is shots each for these bozos. Well, nothing changes for SNP leadership. They retain the status quo. Their objective is to retain the status quo and continue. That's why they're working together with the rest of the Yuns. The Yuns, okay, they're the devolutionist Yuns. They're working. They don't want a constitutional convention. They don't want to talk to Salvo, to talk to us, to talk to anybody who's a true independentista. They'd rather talk to the Yuns. The SNP leadership is not to be trusted. Angus Robertson won't take the poison chalice of leadership until it's safe to do so, if it ever is. He's a big part of the problem. Lloyd is correct. All they can do is push the vote for SNP and not independence. They'll still go with their SNP 1 and 2 and hell mend them. They have to be destroyed, and we can do it. We should do it. They fear questions. Lloyd's right again. They will not answer questions because they fear questions. And what have you done for Indy since Nicola was handed the golden keys for independence to the freedom of the country of our people, and she instantly sold them, and you're part of that deal, you shysters, you traitors. Why do you keep with your failed strategy, John and Angus Robertson, of asking England for a second Indy ref when they've said they won't? The other thing, because they fear the exposure once the Alex Salmond stitch-up story becomes clear, because that will destroy Angus Robertson, Nicola Sturgeon, John Swinney, and all the rest of these shysters that currently lead the SNP. They have no courage. The SNP is a barrier. It is a real barrier. It needs smashed aside, Roddy, you're right. And Angus was key in creating the barrier by removing the power of the members to set policy. He is guilty of betraying the cause of independence, and he has stated there will be no SNP at any constitutional convention. Who the hell do you think you are? Manoeuvres makes no difference. Remove these knobstacles.
Yeah, the old knobstacles word. We've got a patent out in that, by the way. Phil, good word, mate. Alan, here's it. Now, one of the people who's starting to show a bit of unrest, unbelievable, is Kelly Given. I mean, when the Kelly Givens of this world are briefing against you, you're teased out, mate, isn't it? You tease it.
It's quite laughable. I mean, Monday we had John Swinney pulling out the Saltire banner, getting the troops rallied. Let's get the movement working politically. Where have you been, John? The movement's never stopped working. Your party stopped working. That's where the problem is. We have been campaigning since 2015, when you were supposed to, with your 56 withdraw from Westminster and pull our boys back home and declare independence. That's what you were elected for. But it took a couple of days for Angus Robertson to put the St. George's Cross back onto that Saltire and bring back the Jack, because that's what that man does. Maybe he should spend less time with the Friends of Israel and make more time for this movement so as we could go forward for independence. But Kelly Giffens, I mean, laughable. The Barbie of the SNP. I think she's just got her finger in the exhaust pipe of the gravy bus so as it doesn't leak out, because that is what she's after. There's too many grifters within the SNP. In fact, there's a lot of grifters within this movement. When you have someone standing for election because they want to be an MSP, that's the one you do not vote for. Every single Liberate Scotland candidate are standing to get votes for independence. Seats are a byproduct. It's as simple as that. Votes for Liberate Scotland are votes for independence, nothing else. So 2026, think before you vote. Do you want a grifter supping their gravy, or do you want an independence diehard in there to remove Westminster's power? Because that's what Liberate Scotland are doing.
Here we have it, Eva. Here's a man who's, they've been saying, get behind John, we need help. We shouldn't get rid of him because of the by-election defeat. But he is, as we discussed last week, he was responsible for that. His lack of leadership, his lack of nous has caused it. It's no surprise that the peasants are revolting, is it?
Well, I think that he followed through with the most disappointing set of appointments to his cabinet. And you saw that, I'm just looking for the photo, I'd looked it out there, where he promoted to cabinet positions Marie Todd, who's now in charge of drug and alcohol policy, when he should have been lifting the phone to Anne-Marie Ward.
Yep.
He promoted Mary McCallan to a full cabinet position again. She's 32 years old. And he promoted Tom Arthur. Now, these people may have attributes of a certain type. I'm not altogether certain what they actually are. But what pains me greatly is that the population of Scotland is actually a pretty well-educated, experienced and skilled population. We are, broadly speaking, mainly a very intelligent nation. We should be a very wealthy country. We're not too wee and we're not too poor. But every single time you watch Holyrood, you say to yourself, are we in fact too stupid? Because the people who inhabit Holyrood, in the main, particularly those elected for the SNP and for the Greens, give the impression, sometimes on a daily basis, that they are too stupid to be there. And we, the public, are so stupid that we elected them. We elected people who are utterly inept, incapable of running a menage, let alone a country. Now, that can only be deliberate. It is not by act or omission other than a deliberate policy of devolution being the settled will of the SNP. That is abundantly clear. But today, at the Independence Forum, and when Alan and I and others a few years ago used to do the Alba Party Poverty and Equalities Roadshow, and at every independence gathering I've ever been at that was not a party political gathering, the intelligence and the inspiration and the power and the fire and the love and the determination of the movement has been obvious, perhaps never more so than in George Square on the night before the referendum, but it's reverberated many, many times since, especially at some of the marches that were attended by 150, 200,000 people. Scotland is brimming over with talent and expertise. And if John Swinney actually had the balls to hold a constitutional convention, he would find flocking to it the brains of this country, the brains of this movement, people in industry, for example, Phil, Simon Forrest, people in medicine such as Philippa Whitford, people in drugs and addictions policy, Anne-Marie Ward, social work experts, Maggie Mellon. You can go across every single discipline, every aspect of public and private life in Scotland, and you will find experts in their field who are absolutely top dollar, gold standard experts who know what they're talking about. And if you sat a dozen of them in a room, they would transform Scotland literally overnight. A good example is housing. Alec Neil has got housing policy and innovations coming out his ears. He's the guy that should be sitting in Butte House. He should be advising on housing policy, and he should be joined by the likes of Tim Rideout and a guy that I won't name who spoke at today's event very eloquently about how the SNP should learn to push the bloody boat out, and they should start doing things that challenge the Westminster government, and they should say, you said we can't have a national housing company, well, we're having it anyway. What are you going to do about it? We can't have a national energy company. Aye, we are. And that kind of determination on the part of the government elected to represent the people of Scotland would lead to a groundswell of support for a party which is currently in the doldrums in the polls in the sense of voter apathy. What we need are the people who understand the job, rolling their sleeves up and getting the job done. And that means some of them, some of us, are going to have to elbow the likes of John Swinney out of the road if he doesn't get his act together and get it together soon. And you might laugh about this, but you said John Robertson in error there, Lloyd. But John Robertson, you'll remember, was a Scottish footballer who scored the winner against England in the early 1980s. That's how good I am in my football history, but don't ask me about anything current. However, John Robertson would do a better job of running the Scottish government than John Swinney's doing. And it reminds me of Billy Connolly and his sketch about Scottish football players and how they would dance about the park. Well, I'll pass it to you, Jimmy, and then you pass it to me, Willie, and then I'll kick it up the park to Peter, and then he'll bounce it back to you. That's exactly what Scottish SNP politicians are doing at the moment with the independence notion. You talk about it, and then I'll talk about it, and you talk about it some more, and that'll keep them fooled. That'll keep them on their toes. That's where we are. And it's where we ought not to be, because the serious side of it is people are hungry and they're dying and they're doing without in a land of poverty amidst plenty. I'm sitting looking at the North Sea. The oil rigs are out there and there's guys sitting in these oil rigs looking ashore, and all they see are food banks and baby banks and school clothing banks, and it is completely unacceptable. And for that reason and that reason alone, John Swinney better get his finger out, because if he doesn't, there is a revolution coming.
Indeed, and we are that revolution. But talking of Alec Neil, he is a grandee of the party, Lloyd, and when he's talking about, Angus saying, we'll have no interaction with the rest of the movement. When he's saying it's stupid and it's two fingers up to the movement, really, again, I say it, the writing is on the wall. There is civil war brewing.
Yeah, but it's like everything in politics. The first question you have to ask is, who benefits? Now, every time I hear Alec Neil speak, I know ultimately who would benefit, and that would be the people of this country. Every time I hear John Swinney, Angus Robertson, a host of them, I ask myself that same question: who benefits? And every single time the answer is them, personally. And that's all. Now, because I know these people, I know that there's an awful lot of people senior in the Scottish National Party who have attitudes about other people, and they will not speak to them, despite the fact that they know they've got the best ideas to drive us forward. So shifting away slightly from the SNP so I don't get myself into the world of defamation, the whole manner in which the SNP, particularly since Alec left the leadership in 2015 and 2014, the whole way that they've treated Commonweal has astounded me. And in some ways, but this will make sense. Commonweal has effectively been a think tank for the national movement, for the movement for independence. Always, characterized as being the left-wing think tank. Well, some of us would say far from it, actually. What it is, it's a think tank that thinks sensibly about how best we can govern our country, develop our economy, and provide for our people. That, to me, is a pretty damn good thing. The Scottish National Party has ignored Commonweal from day one. Yet everyone in the movement will reference you to, oh, Commonweal said this, Commonweal said that. Why? Because they're coming up with the ideas that the half-witted ministers in Swinney's cabinet should be demanding of their civil servants, but they don't. And why do they not? Because these are people that have been over-promoted, and over-promoted for one reason: because they are loyal to the leaders. You only have to go back to the last time round when John was leader. What was his first and principal aim? Was to remove absolutely everybody that he didn't think was loyal to him. So Margot MacDonald first, Dorothy Grace Elder second, Campbell Martin, maybe me as well, but that's neither here nor there. The fact is, as Eva has said, the talent, the ingenuity, the ability is here within our country. But if you are small-minded and you believe that just having got the job and having got the title, you deserve instant respect, which is exactly the approach that John Swinney takes, exactly the approach that the vast number of his cabinet secretaries take as well, is that because they have the title, therefore they deserve respect that they've never worked for. The collapse of the intellectual heart of the Scottish National Party happened at devolution because we didn't prepare and learn the lessons that we could have learned from our fellow independistas in the other devolved nations of Europe, who gave us warnings in 1998 and 1999, said, beware, because devolution can be a trap if you allow it to be a trap. And let me tell you, 25, 26 years later, we're at the bottom of the trap and the spikes are going right up through us at the moment. And until we, the people, provide a ladder for ourselves to get out of that trap, then we're going to be continually turning over to the benefit, back to what I started with, to the benefit of one structure and one structure only. And that is the British state that will use us, will deplete our population as it has done for 300 years, will extract all our natural resources as it has done for 300 years, and leave us, the rump end, blaming each other for the circumstances that we're in. Because make no mistake about it, that's what the SNP are doing just now. They are blaming the people and refusing any criticism whatsoever. And that, again, is the main reason that that particular barrier needs to be pushed out of the way.
One we didn't mention, of course, we had on this show a couple of times, Stuart Bannatyne, who could have built his catamaran ferries, the whole fleet, for the price of the 3 that were built down in the Clyde. And he offered to do it for no charge to him. He was given his designs to his land of birth for nothing, and his expertise for nothing. But no, they listened to a civil servant in London tell them what to do, and appointed their pals into the Caledonian McBrain director's box. But the opposition aren't any better, Phil. Now, you were looking at this week. We had the big financial statement, and Labour, the English nationalists and the Labour Party are all over it, saying, oh, you're getting the biggest settlement ever. You've looked at this. Give us your opinion and what you're fact-finding. Is there cuts in every detail, as the SNP say, or is it a generous benefit given to us by our English masters?
Same old, I'm afraid. It's exactly as it's always been, smoke and mirrors. And, I mean, you don't need me to tell you that. The media will tell you. In this case, I would quote Sky News that she pledges the largest settlement since devolution for Scotland, okay? 52 billion. As she unveiled a raft of investments, the Scottish Government will receive an average block grant, allegedly, of 50.9 billion per year between 26, 27, 28, 29. However, you really need to check alternative sources other than mainstream media, folks, for what it really means. For starters, how much does Scotland play into the Treasury? Well, that's a tricky one because GERS is a con game, or GERS is a con game. Admitted at the time by the Tory Scottish Secretary, Ian Lang, who worked under John Major. GERS was deliberately designed from the outset by the UK government to make Scotland and the non-Tory parties look bad. So this game is just a continuation of this. And in fact, there was a quotation in a leaked memo where Lang stated, and I quote, "I judge that GERS is just what is needed at present in our campaign to maintain the initiative and undermine the other parties. This initiative could score against all of them." And this was basically what GERS was designed for. And what happened was this memo was released and Labour got a hold of it. What did they do? They kept stum and used it for their own benefit, because that's what they do. They don't give a damn about us. The GDP of Scotland, okay, this is 50 odd billion. Right? According to Statista, Okay, in 2023, the gross domestic product of Scotland was approximately 187.2 billion British pounds. What is GDP? Well, gross domestic product. It's the monetary measure of the total market value of all final goods and services produced within a country in a specific period. That goes to Westminster in profits, and we get back 50 billion. Doesn't sound like a pretty good deal to me. Even if you go on to listen to Richard Murphy, a friend of Scottish, a friend of justice, a friend of socialism, a friend of fairness, and he criticised. He's the emeritus professor at Sheffield University, and what he says quite simply, Reeves decided that if she changed the fiscal rules so that she could borrow more for investment, she could appear to be a big spender, whilst at the same time trying to meet her current fiscal rule that desperately attempts to make current year government spending match current year tax revenue. This gets really boring. But in the big picture, the government actually spends over £1,000 billion a year. So on top of the planned Tory spend of 90 billion, this is only 23 billion more out of £1,000 billion spend. The outcome here is in reality, according to Professor Richard Murphy, a continuation of austerity. So that's what we've got, folks. Smoke and mirrors. And what does it mean for Scotland? More crap, more lies. You know, it's an absolutely appalling situation. We're worth 180 billion a year GDP, and we're getting sent back some of the money we send down south as usual. Same game. In real terms, we lose, Roddy. That's what happens every year. Why should this be any different?
I am so surprised to hear that, as you can imagine, Phil. I am shocked to my core. But folks out there now, you know, when these Labour lying house jocks start telling you how generous they've been, you can say to them, bull keech. Absolute bull keech. We can say that before the watershed, can't we? But here it is, another one of the great things of our Rachel in accounts, for which, again, we want to patent. Others have stolen it, but it was our Lloyd that started about Rachel in accounts. Is this, Alan? It turns out, and we said it, you heard it on here first, folks, that the NIC hike would cost jobs because it's come out and known that the annual basis payroll has dropped by 274,000 as employers pay off people or don't recruit people because they don't want to pay the NIC hike. Again, paint me purple and call me Shirley. I am shocked, Alan. How about you?
This has been one of the most disastrous policies for economics that ever come out of the Labour Party. I mean, it's not just the amount of jobs that have been lost, it's the type of jobs that have been lost. Many charities have had to get rid of a lot of their staff because they could not afford it. They could not have our money going in to help their cause, which was then having to be paid international insurance contributions. It also has a knock-on effect with local government. When you're paying your council tax, you're having a lot of that money that you're paying for council tax, which you expect to be paid on services, now being put back into the Westminster government coffers because they're pulling it back under national insurance contributions. I employ 2 PAs, personal assistants, to help me with personal intimate care for Megan. Their the national insurance contributions that I have to pay has gone sky high. They're hurting the most vulnerable people. And all they're interested in is bringing money in to say we didn't raise income tax to keep their wealthy benefactors happy. That's all that was about. They tried to do a sneaky manoeuvre while you've been caught. Reverse that decision because you're seriously harming the economy. If you want to make this country, the economy grow, then
I think we've lost Alan there. Lost Alan temporarily. Either that or he's got a hell of a stutter. I don't know what it is. I think we've lost him. But on the economy, one of your, I don't know what to call it, big things anyway, Eva, is Grangemouth and your area and how the people have been let down. The 200, we talked about it a few weeks ago, the 200 million that they were promised by Starmer, another lie. Never happened. And this week, More bad news. Now, here's someone they could be spending the 200 million on, but they're trying to blame the SNP, of course, because they bought Chinese buses. But the rules are, folks, that you have to take the lowest tender. That's just the fact. But the point is, Alexander Dennis is talking about relocating to England. More industrial vandalism of our country and more taking away of Scottish assets. Why not use the 200 million to keep them here in Scotland, Eva? Or am I missing something?
No, you're not missing anything, Roddy, but the sad thing is, if you look at the spin on this story and the way that different elements of the media are reporting it, so some are emphasising the Scottish Government buying buses from China, others are emphasising that there's just a closure and 400 jobs will be lost, and very few are talking in terms of what you've said there and the National said in their headline, the jobs aren't being lost. The jobs will still exist. They just won't be Scottish jobs. They'll be in England. And that's the same thing that happened with Grangemouth. The Grangemouth jobs are lost because, in essence, they're relocated south of the border. And that position is replicated throughout Scotland in many different areas. And that will continue to be the case. And if I was the Prime Minister of the UK and I was sitting in Westminster and I was elected in an English constituency, I'd be quite happy with that policy because I don't need the votes of the Scots. I don't need Scots MPs if I'm running Westminster and I've got an English majority. The Scots don't matter, they don't count. The only reason I've got the Scots is because they're not actually whinging, moaning ne'er-do-wells. They're a cash cow. That's what Scotland is. Scotland is a resource to be tapped. And drain Scotland as much as you possibly can. And Westminster needs to, because it's Scotland's resources that bankroll Westminster. That's what makes the difference. That's why Westminster is still operating the way that it is. It's why they've got money for illegal wars. It's why they've got money to send to Ukraine. It's why they can act Billy Big Boss on the world stage. If they didn't have Scotland's resources, it'd be a very different set of circumstances. So the best thing that can happen in 2026 isn't just that Scotland votes for independence in a de facto referendum. It is that an English independence party is born and rises, and England get their independence, and they can use Westminster for what it actually does, which is looks after English interests. End of story. That would solve the problems overnight. Westminster wouldn't have to subsidise the whinging Scots anymore. They would get rid of the taffies and they would get rid of the paddies as well, and they would be left to look after themselves, and they can stand on their own 2 feet as we will stand on ours.
Yeah, excellent. Now, a bit of levity, actually, a bit, Lloyd, on this one. You remember 2014 when I think it was Lord Ankram who told us that if we voted yes, aliens could land in Scotland and they were known to protect us. And I think he also suggested that they were going to bomb Glasgow and Edinburgh airports so that the Russians couldn't land planes there. Oh, you know, oil was running out. Remember that one? Low quality oil that was only good for making grease. Well, a good friend of ours, Catherine McKern, sent a tremendous... I saw this online, a great meme, and I said, oh, can I use that? And she said, please do. And we got Liberate Scotland. We've got a graphics designer, folks, in our team, who was actually refused work by another independence party, offered to do work for them for nothing, and they said, we don't need you. Same as they didn't need our app, we didn't want it. But anyway, this was it. And it was this, we're the socket, and who's getting the heat? You see, they were the socket, where's the burn? Yeah, that was it. We're the socket, they're the heater, guess who's feeling the burn? Now there, it's encapsulated, it's fantastic. Here's one of the replies I got when I put it out. It's a belter. You're going to love this one, Lloyd. It's an absolute belter. Because, sadly, it's not that simple. Scotland is low quality electricity. Now,
it's astonishing. It's just, oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. Do you see this internet and social media? Every halfwit on the planet's got an opinion about absolutely everything. They just open their mouths and it comes. Ah, dear, oh dear. Well, low quality electricity. Well, in that case, you'll not be wanting any of our wind power. You'll not be wanting any of our hydroelectric power. You won't be wanting any of our wave power electricity because obviously it'll not work in England, will it? It astonishes me. It absolutely astonishes me. The vicious kind of hatred towards the idea of Scotland becoming an independent country really does make people demented. It makes them say things that, frankly, if they sat down and saw it written down, reminds me actually that particular statement. I remember during the power cuts in the early 70s, which didn't go on for months and weeks and years. They happened maybe twice for 2 weeks, and you got electricity. So I goes into my granny's house, and none of the fires are on. And I'm saying to her, "Oh, Nara, what are you doing? It's freezing out there. You need to put the fires on." No, I'm saving it up for when we get an electricity cut. It's the same logic, you bampots. Electricity is electricity is electricity. That's all there is to it. And what's marvellous about it, though, is it does highlight, it does indeed highlight the fact that every time we get some of these comments about the ineptitude and the stupidity of us north of the Solway and the Tweed, we can quietly accept it, nod sagely, and shut them up.
You're our energy expert, Phil. You're our oil and gas man now. Can you explain to me what low quality electricity is, unlike the English high quality electricity, obviously?
It's a new one on me, and the discussion I had with Reese at the SSRG conference, where he set out, and this was on the 17th, the morning of the 17th last month, and he set out what Scotland should be doing, which includes the fact that we produce more energy than we need. It's already been pumped. It's already been cabled down. We've got an interconnector already connecting us to England. They're already taking our electricity. They want more power from us, and they want more electrical power from us charged down. Well, it's a new one on England too, because folks in England, you've been using poor quality Scottish electricity your whole bloody existence, you moron.
Yeah. I mean, they're spending 40 billion building this super highway to take the low quality shit down. So it's a belter. But we started the show, Alan, talking about how John Swinney and Angus Roberts have ruled out any kind of constitutional convention, any kind of unity, because by doing that, they don't have to face up to independence, because that's the only way we get independence, is with absolute unity and unity of purpose. And it's why Liberate Scotland only has one policy, one line rather, in its manifesto. But he won't sit down with the Alapa Party, he won't sit down with Liberate Scotland, he won't sit down with ISP, he won't sit down with anyone that's in charge of any kind of pro-independence. But compliments to our Stu Campbell at Wings Over Scotland, he is willing to sit down with a whole load of unionists, and a couple of them are a wee bit iffy, shall we say. They're work for the spooks. But John and Kate, the farmer's daughter, happy to talk with Brits all day long. What does that tell you, folks? What does it tell you, Alan?
Well, the telltale sign is Britain in 2050. Where's John's priorities? I mean, we want independence 2026, next year. Liberate Scotland. That's what we're going for. No discussions with the Unionist Party. We are in full discussions with the independence movement, where John should be. I mean, the SNP have totally lost the plot. They have sucked every single hope out of this movement for the past 11 years. Well, we're now putting that hope back into this movement. There is only one way forward, and that is to get rid of the grifters. And it's quite clear that if John is willing to go into negotiations with every single unionist party to see how Britain's going to be in the year 2050, it means he has no way of getting independence. He has no vision at all, or he maybe just doesn't want it. And that's what I'm beginning to think. He has conned us right, left, and centre. There is no way that I can possibly ever vote SNP again. And unfortunately, or fortunately, there is now more pro-independent thinking the exact same way. The SNP at every election that they've stood for in the past year or so, have received less votes from the independence movement than those who have stayed at home. We have to get these people who are staying at home back out to vote. Give them hope. Give them back their pride and give them back their dignity, because John Swinney has removed that from them. They're downhearted. So let's get back on the streets, folks. Let's get out and speak to them. Show them that there is a movement back and that Liberate Scotland are now firmly in this game. Vote Liberate Scotland and we will liberate Scotland.
Yeah, well said, Alan. And on this, again, I want to give compliments to Ewan McGregor, who I pinched this off of on Twitter. But we look at this, isn't this so true, Eva? You want to get the old Claymore out of the thatch for that. But as I say, compliments to Ewan McGregor for giving us that. But there's John Swinney's willing to sit down with the Brits like Keir Starmer for a wee chat. The one that says we can't have another referendum, we can't get independence. Eva.
Let's be positive about this. Towards the end of that clip, I'm pretty certain that was George Square, the night before the referendum. I was there. I had come out of the Limb Centre having got a new leg, and I was literally walking on air, and I was standing there in the square on what were my own 2 feet, one I was born with and one that the Scottish NHS gave me. And I knew then that independence will come, but it's only going to come when the Scots learn to stand on their own 2 feet, whether they're human or plastic or, as I've now got, bionic. And you see, what Tommy Sheridan said there was, it's estimated by the Brits, I paraphrase slightly, that Scotland has only 10 years of oil left. And he said, and tomorrow the UK will have 10 hours. And by God, I wish he had been right. But that's what we've got to remember. Scotland is a resourceful country, and we're full of our own resources that are valuable, that the world wants to buy, and we're happy to sell them to the world. But our greatest resource is our people. And it's our people who are being let down over and over again, persistently and consistently by weak government. There's a reason why people go back to saying, what did Alex Salmond do? There's a reason why Charlie Abel, following Alex's sudden and awful, untimely, premature death, wrote his poem that said, when you drive across the Queen's Ferry crossing, think of Alec. When your parents go to the uni and they didn't pay for it, think of Alec. Because Alec introduced competent government into the Scottish Parliament, and he maintained it for long enough with a good enough team around about him that gave the Scottish people the confidence they had not previously had to consider that Scotland could run our own affairs, not just competently, but well. And it breaks my heart to see that committed independence supporters are now looking at the SNP and saying, thank God we're no independent, because what a bloody hash they would have made of it had we been. And that's the wrong way to look at it. The right way to look at it is to say Scotland has politicians in waiting, and Liberate Scotland in the SNP for sure, but just not in the current leadership, in the ISP, in Sovereignty, and of course in Alba, and of course people that are in no party. We have politicians in waiting who are more than capable of taking on Westminster, of negotiating and demanding a fair and reasonable independent settlement, declaring our independence and standing there as our flag is raised, as Lloyd says every week, between those of Saudi Arabia and Senegal, because the Scots are no less and no weaker than any other country, and we're no better than any other race. We just want equality, and that is what our independence will bring. But it won't bring it with John Swinney behaving like the coward that he has undoubtedly shown himself to be. So it's time to step up to the mark or get out the bloody road.
Here, here. And on that note, I just want to finish on this. Those politicians that he was talking about, I am not one of them. And contrary to what some people have said, that, you know, I am the Führer or the leader or the chairman of Liberate Scotland, I really don't know. Well, I am actually interviewing the leadership of Liberate Scotland on a Wednesday special. And as you can imagine, I'm not actually going to be interviewing myself. No. So for the wee dafty who wrote that, and for the other dafties that believed it, I'm sorry, but I'm not. I have a job. I have a specific job in there. And it's not as a leader. This lot wouldn't let me. I'm lucky to keep this gaff going. So I'm sorry about that, but I will. So I'll be interviewing them. So, but if Techie, could you stick up the email address? Any questions you would like, and and I'm sure there are questions you would like, email me before Tuesday night, and I can look at them. You can get me at roddy@indieforindy.scot. Asking any questions of the coalition of the parties of the willing. And I would just say to the other ones, the parties that, you know, are not in, the door's still open. The door is still open. But for goodness sake, don't give me the idiotic question, well, we're not going to join your organisation, but you've got to step aside for us on the list. Ain't going to happen. And be realistic. You're either in or you're out. So don't expect us to do the heavy lifting. We're spending a fortune. We're spending time. The hours that these people put in, folks, and the people in ISP and sovereignty are putting in to try and get a plebiscite election in 2026. You have no idea the work that's going in. And all we've got is these wee snipers finding wee points. Oh, we can't do it because we can't do this. And oh, I don't like that, your policy in the European Union. We can get a life, you boring little people. And anyway, until we see you midweek with the leadership and me doing the interviewing, take care, you and yours. Bye.
Through a Scottish Prism, the programme that is unapologetically pro-Scottish independence and anti-Westminster rule. Everything we say here is viewed through a Scottish prism. Brought to you by Barhead Boy.